All right, welcome into another episode of Buzz Beat. What's going on, everyone? Hope you're having a good evening. It's Tuesday, November 19th. Welcome back to another episode. It's been a few weeks since we last recorded. I think the Hornets were 3 games into the season at that point in time. And at the time of this recording, they've now played 13 games. The Hornets are 5-8 at the time of this recording. We'll go into some of their other fundamentals. But before we get into all of that, I would like to say hello to my co-host today, Darian. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. I saw something on Twitter that asked, "How's your team doing?" And the way I described it for the Hornets is somehow it's better than expected, but also somehow it's worse than expected at the same time.
Yeah, it doesn't help, or maybe it does help. Depends on which way you're looking at it. Just how like murky the Eastern Conference is right now. I mean, felt like a week ago they were up to like fourth or fifth, in the Eastern Conference, and then you lose 2 games, and all of a sudden you're ninth or 10th, and could be worse than that. So just very, very choppy waters in the Eastern Conference. I'm sure some of that stuff will normalize and stabilize throughout the year. I don't expect the Hornets to be a playoff team for a few different reasons, including what they should be probably incentivized to do from a team building standpoint. But those are for discussions later in the season. The Hornets are currently 5-8. Like I said, at the time of this recording, they're, according to Cleaning the Glass, they're 20th in offense, 23rd in defense, 23rd in net rating. Those numbers and that record, we are recording this before the Hornets play the Brooklyn Nets Tuesday evening. That game is at Barclays Center up in Brooklyn. The Hornets were on the road most recently as well, Sunday against the undefeated at the time of this recording, Cleveland Cavaliers. I know they're playing the Boston Celtics tonight, so I don't know. What would you rather watch, Celtics, Cavs, or Nets, Hornets? It's a tough to say, but on this podcast, I think we probably would say the Hornets. Tonight is also an in-season tournament game for the Hornets, which we're not really going to get into all that much. But I think we will start at the top with the guy who's been Charlotte's best player so far this season, and that is LaMelo Ball. And we're also sort of launching with the question of, is he an all-star this season? And I will just immediately couch my answer and say, I'm not sure if it will end up being an all-star, but he's absolutely playing at like an all-star level. He's playing like one of the top 12 guys in the Eastern Conference. The shot making has been really impressive. The fourth quarter performances have been amazing. Some of the clutch scoring has been really, really good. So yeah, Darian, just sort of your thoughts on LaMelo, whether it's the fit with Charles Lee's system, or just sort of like what you've noticed from him so far this year, aside from him just like being healthy and playing a lot, which is sort of like, knock on wood, is is a difference from the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I definitely believe he's playing like an all star. The only reason I feel as though he wouldn't make the all star team is if the team, I don't want
Yeah.
to say the team fails him, but it's literally just going to be a matter of just what the record is by the time All Star comes around. But if he is sustaining this, I think it's going to be one of those times where it doesn't really matter
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
record is. But
Yeah.
this is not easily sustainable, especially considering the team around him, and then just still adjusting to the new system. Though I feel like he's probably, this isn't new to LaMelo as far as his playing style, but I feel like he's been the biggest benefactor of change of system.
Mhm.
So while he hasn't had to change too much, I do feel like he's the one that's probably benefiting the most right now. But yeah, like you said, easily top 10, 12 guys in the Eastern Conference. Mike can even go higher. We're just to be safe because
Yeah,
looking at the
yeah,
list.
yeah.
And then you also got to think about like guys like Joel Embiid who will probably get votes and things like that. The politics of it all, but just
Mhm.
as of right now, just speaking, off top of the head without looking at anything, he's definitely easily top 10, 12 guys in the East by far. And a lot of guys
Yeah.
he was being compared to in recent years when he was injured, they were playing. It seems as though while we're still early in the season, it seems as though he has surpassed them. Kind of what we've all assumed, but we just weren't able to say anything because he wasn't playing. But those comparisons seem like they're long gone. It is just one season for those other guys, but LaMelo didn't get the benefit of the doubt when he was hurt. So yeah, it's good to see him play like that. He's playing really free, and I just like what I'm seeing from him. Uh, Without going too much into it, I just think that he's having a great season.
Yeah, he's played all 13 games so far this season. Again, at the time of this recording, just under 34 minutes per game, averaging just under 30 points per game, 29.7, almost 7 assists per game, 6.7, over a steal per game. He's averaging almost 13 3-point attempts, shooting 36% on those. He's above, I think, 32% on both catch and shoot and pull up threes. The volume of pull up threes this season has been pretty ridiculous. He's shooting 52% on twos as usual. He's money from the line, 88% from there. Turnovers are up a little bit. I think part of that is, the ball's in his hands a lot. And obviously, he has a crazy usage rate. In fact, according to basketball references numbers, LaMelo actually leads the NBA in usage rate. This is, I wouldn't say it's like quite just like pure like Luca, Trey Young, Helio style basketball. But this is pretty like he's on the ball a lot. He's running a lot of pick and roll. But obviously they're getting into a lot of like 5 out stuff. So it's not just pure like LaMelo pick and roll every single time down the court, but it's obviously like a lot of that. Um, some other numbers for LaMelo. Speaking of the pick and roll, 0.99 points per pick and roll possession this season when he's the ball handler and when he uses the possession. So, shooting foul, takes a shot, or commits a turnover. 56% effective shooting on those possessions, which is quite good. He's scoring over 11 points per game out of the pick and roll. So, over a third of his points per game, of the of the 29.7, 11 and change are coming out of the pick and roll. Clutch numbers, so this is with the game, 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, scores within plus or minus 5 points. LaMelo Ball, 35 points, 11 of 21 shooting. That's 52%, 4 of 10 on three, 3 assists, and 0 turnovers. Those 35 clutch points are tied for fifth most in the NBA with Kevin Durant. They're behind only De'Aaron Fox, Nikola Jokic, Jason Tatum, and DeMar DeRozan. So, I mean, some of the best, closers in basketball, basically. In the fourth quarter this season, LaMelo's averaging 11.2 points per fourth quarter on 55% shooting, 47% threes, 90% from the line, and a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. He's top 5 in total points and points per game, behind only Giannis, Anthony Davis, Jason Tatum, and Jokic in terms of scoring average. He's number 13 in assist. He's top 7 in assist rate. Like I said, number 1 in usage rate. He's number 2 in the NBA in three-pointers, behind only Anthony Edwards. He also leads the league in three-point attempts. He's number 18 in free throws made. That feels like a big one to circle,
Yeah.
just given the fact, we've been, it's something we'll probably be talking about with LaMelo his whole career. Is just like, is he getting downhill? What do those drives look like? Is he scoring off of those? Is he getting to the line? What are the playmaking options? And really, like, I think he's done an excellent job driving the ball this season. Like, he's still not an amazing isolation scorer, and I'm not sure if he ever quite will be. He'd have to just get, like, I think a lot sort of stronger. But the drives have been good, whether he's, in transition, grab and goes, coming off of a handoff, pick and roll, the occasion, cross match, isolation possession, the spot ups where he can catch and go and he's playing off of, Miller, Brandon Miller, or Trey Mann, or Grant Williams, or something like that, especially when they're in those five outlooks. I think he's been determined. I think he's like playing through contact. I think there are certain drives you see him actually like inflicting the contact and the bump on the other guy, which to me feels like that feels like a growth for him too. Like for him to be the one like out there floating around with the live dribble, like punishing guys with his physicality. You just hope it's sustainable and he can keep it up because like he's obviously like a really special offensive player with that. He's number 10 in offensive box plus minus. He's top 20 overall in box plus minus. He's also number 2 in the NBA in personal fouls, which continues to be a concern as he will seems like at least 1 or 2 games per week he's in foul trouble. But yeah, I think he's obviously playing great. I think he's dialing up a certain level of like aggression and confidence that this team needs. Some of the shots he's made have just been ridiculous. Like the one leg, floaters from deep from beyond the arc. Some of the catch and shoots that he's hit deep in the corner. Just pretty unbelievable. And then his touch on some of those like driving finishes where it's like I don't know if it's a runner or a layup. It's like he shoots it like it's a runner, but it's from like a layup spot on the floor, and he just puts enough loft on it to get it up over the top of the rim protection. I mean, he's one of a few guys on earth that can really like do stuff like that. It's
And usually he's taking those through contact. Like
yeah, exactly.
every
Yeah,
time, it's
yeah,
it's almost
yeah.
like as a Hornets fan, you close your eyes because you see him hit the ground every time,
Yep,
roll, get up, and
yep,
sprint back.
yep.
But yeah, he takes those through contact a lot.
And to be doing all of this with I mean, like the team around him is pretty compromised. Like there's no real lob threats on this roster. Like I think they've managed to sort of like get him into some good pick and roll scenarios, and he's been able to work with Grant Williams or Musa Diabate, and we're going to talk more about him in a minute. But we've seen Lamelo having to make lemonade in the pick and roll with Taj Gibson, and he's still doing that while also some of the secondary creators around him Brandon Miller has struggled. Miles Bridges has not played well. Trey Mann's been good, but he's also missed some time with injuries. They're really having to rely a lot on guys like Seth Curry and Josh Green and Cody Martin to be playmakers or shooters for them. So LaMelo is obviously taking on a like a pretty serious like uh, responsibility in terms of being a creator for the team, but I think he's been terrific. I think like this is winning basketball. I know the team has a losing record, but just given what he's doing in the fourth quarter and in the clutch and sort of how some of these baskets are coming, this feels real to me. And it's like I think not from me personally, but sort of when like national media types have critiqued him, it's sort of been that LaMelo was like a carnival act kind of, right? Like very fun to watch, very skilled, would give you something that you hadn't seen before on a nightly basis, but ultimately you didn't know if it was going to be there the next day and it wasn't producing anything like totally like sustainable in terms of wins and I think there's a lot of context missing with those types of critiques. Like that was always why it was sort of like frustrating to have to hear that on a podcast or a TV show or whatever. But yeah, I think he's been pretty unbelievable so far this season. Yeah, Darian, I guess I'd be curious to know like your thoughts on these. I guess I sort of was touching on this too, but just like the sustainability of this with Lamelo. I mean, I guess maybe you don't have a crystal ball, but just like from, I guess I mean this sort of from a health standpoint, but also from like a production standpoint as well. Like, is this something that Charlotte has to manage? Because right now he's played every game, 34 minutes a night, tops in the league in usage rate, all kinds of fourth quarter, scoring responsibilities. Yeah, thoughts on just sort of like the sustainability of it, maybe some ways the Hornets can potentially like get out in front of some of these things.
So the way, if we're going based off how the team is playing as of today, I don't think it's sustainable. And a lot of that is just like you said. A lot of this team is compromised. You have two of your, supposed to be helping hands to LaMelo not playing well. Do I expect them to play bad forever? No, but
Mhm.
you never know. We like sophomore slumps are not something that's new to the NBA. So Brandon Miller, this could just be an off season for him. It's hard to really tell this early in the season, especially he's already missed time. Miles Bridges, as soon as he kind of got, it seemed like he was getting a little more comfortable. He missed time, not a lot, but he still just momentum wise, it just took him out of it. So and then you like you said, relying on Taj Gibson, Musa Diabate, Grant Williams to be your pick and roll partners who even I mean, unless it's Mark in very, very limited time with LaMelo, you can't even count Nick Richards as a good pick and roll partner because of his offensive fouls. So it's just tough. It doesn't really say much about LaMelo. It's just more about the team around him, which I feel like that's something
Mhm.
we've said for a very, very long time. Except now, I feel as though we have all the film we need to really be sure about that. Before, I felt like it was us, thinking about with a crystal ball and saying, okay, I see spurts here. I know LaMelo is going to be great, but now he's been great for 13-ish, 14-ish games now. Um, and it's still early in the season, but we see what he can do. He starts off games. We've seen him start off 1 for 11 and end the game 10 for 21 or something like that. He's going to find a way. It's usually been in the fourth quarter, which the team been doing a pretty good job of kind of staying in games
Mhm.
to allow him to have that takeover. It's very rare that we're down 20 at that point, and then his points go to what, like you said, the media are saying is like, oh, it's empty stats or whatever.
Mhm.
No, when he goes off in the fourth, we're usually neck and neck with that team because of that. So I think it's sustainable once, hopefully, because even then, once we get everybody back and everybody, I wouldn't even say we don't even need the best version of Brandon Miller. Though, of course, we'd like to see that. We don't need the best version of Miles Bridges. Um, but we're going to need something from Nick Richards and Mark Williams, and I just don't know how reliable that is.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I think he's going to make the most of it. Um, I based on how this season is going, I don't think he'll finish at this rate. I mean, like a what 20 averaging like 29 points a game.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it may be a little lower than that. But the key to success for this team is not him. To me, not him doing that because it's not. I hate to say it's not fair when you're the star player, but it isn't. To have to carry that burden of doing everything, and then we can maybe kind of touch on Charles Lee's offense, but like even
Mhm.
his assists, they're for the most part generated by him. It's not necessarily generated by the offense. So just him doing so much, such a high efficiency, well usage rate rather, and then just the players around him. Like, can we? Josh Green is not going to shoot 50% from three forever. There's just a lot of things that are going right now that are going to happen forever.
Mhm.
And even with him, it's just like, can he sustain it? And that's a tough ask. That's a
Yeah.
tough ask when, like I said, you're not getting that kind of support from your team. So
30
I would. Oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. No, sorry. My bad. Didn't mean to interrupt there.
Oh, I was just gonna say I would hope that, like I said, we get something from these guys. It's still very, very early in the season. But it's just going to be hard. I think that's one thing. Even if we were saying this, even if Mark Williams played game one, it was going to take some time because he missed so much time. We see. I was even worried about LaMelo a little bit because him jumping back with that. We obviously saw that it didn't take any time.
Mhm.
But still, this team still has to gel. But there's so many missing parts right now that once they finally do figure it out, then we still have to take the 20 games for them to gel together. So that's
Mhm.
kind of why I say it's unsustainable. Is just because there's so much up in the air. But as far as his play, I mean, like I said, it's going to take a dip at some point, but I think that it's somewhat sustainable for the most part. But still,
Yeah.
he is going to need some help.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like the first, probably like 10, 11 games of the season, he was probably like above 40, 41% on pull-up threes on just like crazy efficiency. And he was probably under 30% on catch and shoot threes. And so like, the 3-point percentage was sort of landing in like the mid to upper 30s on obviously crazy volume. And to me, I was like, okay, well, he's not going to shoot 41%, and pull up threes all year. But I was like, historically he's been a great catch and shoot guy. So it's like I feel sort of like I was like, well, maybe those two things sort of balance out. He sort of like stabilizes as still a crazy high volume guy, and some nights are going to be better than others. He's at least like a little less like jumper dependent than he was, at earlier stages of his career. But to me, yeah, it's just like this is a guy that's played very little basketball the last couple of seasons, and here he is leading the league in NBA in usage rate, right? I mean, 37% assist rate, 39% usage rate. If you look at the usage rates for everyone else on the roster, like the Hornets have four guys above 22% usage rate. It's exactly who you would expect it to be. It's LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Trey Mann, Miles Bridges. Everyone else is like 15% or less. Cody Martin, Richards, Grant Williams, Salon, who they're having to play a lot too, Curry, Green, like these guys are all like in like the 10, 12, 13, 14% usage rate. So a ton is really on LaMelo and Brandon's plate, obviously, as well, and Trey when he's playing for them. I really would love to see just like once, man. Like I would love to see like what this offense would look like with LaMelo getting to run pick and roll with Mark Williams. Like just basically someone that can be like a genuine pressure point on the rim because like I feel like teams when they're guarding Charlotte's like ball screen stuff, especially when it's just sort of like mid late clock, Hornets. The first progression didn't work. Okay, break it off. Like let's just get spread pick and roll or empty corner pick and roll. Like I just wish you could see a defense have to like collapse a little bit in on the rim when LaMelo runs pick and roll because that would open up stuff for him. It would also open up like the weak side skips. And I feel like that stuff is there some, but like, I live to one day hopefully see like, LaMelo Ball running a pick and roll. He gets two on the ball because he's such a good pull-up shooter. And then the opposing team has to worry about the lob to Mark Williams. So the weak side low man comes and help off that. And LaMelo, sends a laser skip pass over the top of the defense for a Brandon Miller, catch and shoot three. Like, I'd like to see that once, Can I just see it once actually? But yeah, I'm not sure this isn't like he's gonna keep as long as he's healthy, he will put up numbers. But
Exactly.
like this level of usage and efficiency, I mean, maybe he just keeps it rolling, but it does feel like it's like you're I'm just right now I'm looking for some things to support it right now. If I'm like a part of the Hornets staff, front office,
Mhm.
whatever, because like this is obviously what he's doing is great, it's special, but it's not just that he needs like help, it's sort of like to like sustain this, to maximize this, whatever, you kind of need a few more people not just like doing their jobs because I think guys are to an extent, but just you need a little bit more in terms of like pick and roll juice with the screeners and secondary creation, when he's not playing with Trey Mann. But speaking of the screeners here, well, before we move on, anything else with LaMelo,
I do
Darian?
quickly just want to say that I really like what you're talking about, just like getting help with the screen and then having collapsing people collapse like on rolls and whatnot. Because I saw a stat today that the Hornets are like second, I believe. Yeah, they're second in NBA in 3 point attempts, but we're 15th in percentage.
Hmm.
Um, and I went to see because we all know that Charles Lee is in some way trying to replicate what Boston does. So I
Hmm.
went and watched Boston's last game against the Raptors and watched all the 3 point attempts. They took 61 and made 21. In all those 3 point attempts, out of 61 3 point attempts, what you said was occurring. They had people who were a threat
Yeah.
on the roll. Well, it could,
Yeah.
and sometimes it was even a Peyton Pritchard, Jalen Brown pick and roll. Like it was
Oh,
just
they use
something
guards, they use Holiday like a
right.
screener, screen and roll
Exactly,
guy
Derek
too.
White even.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
and then of course Al Horford with his pop ability. That is what. That's why they can take as many threes as they can. To your
Hmm.
point, I feel as though that is why we are currently struggling in a way. And Lamelo, this may not be sustainable, is because we don't have that. Every
Hmm.
three they had, unless it was Tatum or Jalen Brown, and even sometimes Pritchard, it was open because they
Yeah.
were able to get open. Ours are a
Yeah.
little forced. Ours are more like quickly shoot it before the closeout. but theirs are open, at least by their standard, because they're a great 3-point shooting team.
Mhm.
So for what LaMelo does, like you said, to be sustained, because right now he's just is just a magician and just is making it work. But eventually teams are going to sell out and just make someone else beat them. And that's why, and I'm not trying to speak for you, but that's why we probably feel as though it's not sustainable. It's just because one man can't really do that without some type of production, and it has to be done in a certain way, or else it's not going to matter. So I
Yeah.
think that that's a big point of it. Is that since we're trying to mimic that offense, I think there's a lot of stuff obviously missing from that. So yeah, I
Yeah.
talent wise, I think he can sustain it, but the environment around him, will that help him sustain it? I don't know yet.
Yeah, obviously Boston just like an incredibly healthy like offensive ecosystem. They're
Mhm.
loaded. I think ultimately if you wanted to drill it down for me, it's just like he's playing great, but a lot of this is really dependent on like him being a ridiculous pull-up shooter.
Right.
And like even then, I'd be curious to know where that stabilizes. Like if he's gonna take 8 off dribble threes per game, which is like what he's doing right now. I mean, can he shoot in the high 30s, low 40s on that for a full season? Because if he can, then it's like then part of me is sort of like, oh, actually, no, I think that maybe this is because it opens up. That's what opens up the drives so much. Can open up the passing opportunities. Um, but yeah, I think ultimately he's been like a nice fit. I think with Lee's system, with the 5 out approach that we've talked about a lot. They've been sort of like dialing down some of the like double drag that they were running so much in preseason, like the first 2 weeks of the regular season too, with LaMelo as like the lead ball handler. But I think he's still finding his way when they get into their sort of like 5 out looks. I think Brandon Miller has the chance to sort of like really they're running so much of those like 5 out down screen looks or 5 out
Mhm.
flare looks at the top for Miller. And some of the shots are there. Like he's just gonna have to start, shooting the ball a little bit better. Um, we'll get to Miller in a second, but I want to talk about Musa Diabate, who really is. This is a guy that just is absolutely making the most of his opportunity. Serious under the radar fine this past offseason by the front office. Spent his first 2 seasons out of Michigan on 2-way deals with the Clippers. He was a one and done former 5-star recruit at Michigan, but like not a great Michigan team. And it was sort of like a weird fit for him. He had to play next to Hunter Dickinson, who's still in
I
college
was just about to
basketball,
say that.
playing now at Kansas. So he'll be playing against I guess Duke next week. And what was funny was Diabate was a freshman on that team, and Dickinson was a sophomore. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but Hornets signed him to a 2-way deal on the last day of July this year, and I mean, he's greatly outperformed the contract. Like already, it's November 19th. He should be in line for a standard contract. So yeah, we just wherever Darian, you pick and choose where you want to start. If you want to go with his defense, the defensive versatility, the hustle plays, his work on the glass, like what he does when he gets to like work and pick and roll with LaMelo. What are your thoughts on Moose's play so far this year?
The hustle, it just jumps off the screen when you're watching him play. Um, just because of the fact that I felt as though for the last few years, I felt as though that's what we've been missing from that position in particular. Whether Mark was healthy or not, whether it was Mason Plumlee, whether it was Nick Richards, I it just has felt like though they're not really fighting for the boards. They're just their size allows them to get the boards. They're pretty decent at placement. We've seen Mark Williams have I believe he had a 2020 game last year. I know he had 20 rebounds at one point last year, and then I know the year before that I believe Nick Richards started the season with a 20 rebound game. So it's not like they're not getting boards, but what happens is when we play against I'll actually I know Hornets fans may not like it, but I'll actually even use Jalen Durbin as an example. When we go against guys like that who have this like chip on their shoulder, who have this edge, who has this tenacity when it comes to rebounding, and even the hustle, that those are the teams we usually lose the rebounding battle against. And it's something like I said we've been missing. We've had the size, even though Mark hasn't played as often as obviously we would want him to, and Nick Richards, some people have said that he's may not be as tough as you want him to be when it comes to rebounding. But when we go against those guys who really just fight for every board, that's when we lose the rebounding battle. So it's good to have someone who does not have the size of those guys, but he's fighting for every board. I've seen him get sandwiched between two players, still tip the ball up to himself, and then pass it out. And I've liked that how he's progressed as a rebounder, because the first few games of the season he had Kai Jones syndrome. He'll get the ball and then go straight up. He wouldn't look at all. He wouldn't even try to look who's open. Now he makes a read before he does the next decision, or even sometimes I feel as though he's reading who's around him before he even gets the board, and then automatically goes up because he knows that he may just have one other person down there with him. So I like how he's just he's grown since the beginning of the season, and it's already we've only been playing 13 games, but I love his hustle. And to touch on his defense a little bit, I like his switchability over there. It's not like you want him guarding guards or whatnot, but he is able to kind of pick up that assignment a little bit and just not just be destroyed, which we've seen that in the past. We've had that problem as well. Our big switch on to faster players and just are lost. It's a guaranteed bucket. At least Musa, he adds a little bit of he's almost a little bit of a wild card, I should say. You don't. It's not necessarily a guaranteed bucket for the other team when he switches onto a guard. So I really like him. I really like that he's playing his way to a contract. I really believe that. Now the only thing I will say is his minutes. I don't understand what's going on there. Maybe we can talk about that. But overall, he's just been a great find. Oh, I think you're muted.
My bad.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, I didn't really understand why Musa didn't play more against Cleveland on
Mhm.
Sunday. I think he only played. Let me double check the box
What was
score.
it, 10 minutes, 11 minutes? It was
Yeah,
something like
I was
that.
thinking it was around. Yeah, it was just under 12 minutes.
Mhm.
Only took two shots. Three offensive rebounds, of course. Yeah, I mean his just to throw these things out there, his like per possession per minute statistics are pretty unbelievable. If you're looking at per 36 minutes, 16 I mean, I know these are, it gets like a little funny when you do the numbers when you multiply them like out like this, but
Mhm.
2.1 blocks per 36 minutes, 16.4 rebounds per 46 minutes, 7 offensive rebounds for 40 minutes. Obviously, he's shooting, just under 68% from the field. Um, he does so much like archetypal, like modern big guy, like center stuff really well. And that's the thing that like, and then he has like great motor and stuff too. He's about to turn 23, so he's still very young. Um, I think it's important for you to bet on guys that have like outlier physical traits or good size and are good movers, right? And at six, I mean, I know he's skinny, but 6'11", with his ability to move the way he does, like you were talking about his ability to switch out, like laterally, he can contain ball handlers, try to keep, I wouldn't say he's like a 1-5 switch out stopper, but like he can credibly do it and he can keep the ball in front. And laterally, he can like hang in those situations. Of course, certain guys are going to burn them, but like that's just how it goes in the NBA when you're trying to match up with top flight, guard creators. I think his scheme versatility defensively has been good because like it's not just the switch. Like they've been using him to cross match at times too. And so when that happens, like maybe Grant is matched up with the opposing center, and then you've got Musa on a non-shooter or the power forward. So in those situations, he's either chasing a guy around the perimeter or he's ignoring them and he's in that defensive roamer position where he can do some damage as a rim protector. I think he has the ability to like it feels like every other game he gets just like a nasty chase down block. You see the hustle, his speed in a straight line, the length, the athleticism, like and he kind of has that classic like defensive center trying to earn a contract vibe of like he will try to block everything. And not like in like a reckless way. Just like he's not making any business decisions. You know what I mean? Like his business decision is trying to block every shot. I'd be curious. I'll have to look it up. I don't actually have this number in front of me. I'd be curious to know sort of like what the Hornets rebounding splits look like with him on and off the court. Like, is he impacting team rebounding? It certainly feels like that by
Yeah.
watching him play and just given like what his per minute numbers look like. I mean, it certainly does feels that way. I think one of the sneaky, like, interesting parts of his game, and one of the reasons why I think, along with the defensive upside, along with the hustle plays, like one of the reasons why like he strikes me as being like playable is because like he's a decent short role playmaker. Not he's nothing crazy. This is not Draymond Green on the short roll. This isn't even Grant Williams on the short roll. But like you can throw it to him in space and he'll hit that weak side kick out. You know, if you run pick and roll, the Hornets run pick and roll, Trey Mann or LaMelo Ball or Brandon Miller, they're running it. Diabate screens. He rolls into space. The opponent puts two on the ball, or they're icing the ball screen, and so you just got Diabate in a pocket of space. He's not bad at just like keeping the chain going offensively. Like he can make the next pass. Usually it's just a kick out. It's not him having to like try to pick out someone in the dunker spot. You know, PJ Washington was so good at that when he was with the Hornets.
Mhm.
When Moose is out there, he's the one non-shooter, so he's usually doing it with a pretty well spaced floor. I think he's done a really nice job. We've talked about Charlotte's like how they're running 5-out offense this season, which is taking a play from the Celtics and from Quinn Snyder and the Hawks, and seen a few other teams doing this now. Duke is playing like this offensively, but when they play 5-out, they're putting their center non-shooter on the wing, usually on the left wing, and they're doing that to sort of change the horizontal spacing and sort of the horizontal defensive responsibilities for the opposing center. They can't just chill in the down low at the rim and be like the low man help defender. I think Diabate's activity at the top as a screener, looking to like create space for LaMelo and Brandon Miller coming off those flare screens, or when he needs to run out and set a little step up ball screen, set those down screens on the edges. Like he's just like hitting his marks with that stuff too. So to me, he's been, I just, again, I liked Diabate as a prospect. I saw basically none of him when he was in the Clipper system the last 2 years. So it's pretty awesome to see what he looks like now. I had some like interest in him heading into the season, but I mean, he's way outperformed, the role I was expecting him to get. I thought we'd see him a lot in Greensboro, quite frankly. But just given like where the center rotation is right now, I mean, he's been with Mark hurt, with Richards hurt, he's been a really important stabilizing presence, and just like the activity and his length and his athleticism on the defensive side of the floor and on the glass is just pretty remarkable. So I will, all of that said, sort of curious to where your head might be with him now, Darian. I know he's played 200 minutes, so it's like it really hasn't been that much basketball yet. And so Charlotte doesn't have to be in any hurry to like make a decision on this. And but sort of like if we're trying to project out, like if this is what he is, like a real impactful, rotation center off the bench that can spot start for, if you need whatever that kind of role. Like, what do you think this means for Charlotte's center rotation for later this season and beyond? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm actually really glad you asked me about that because yes,
I
while
had a
it's only
feeling.
200 minutes, I and I'm not going to speak for anybody, so this is strictly my opinion, but I feel as though he makes it difficult for I feel like for Nick Richards automatically, and that's not necessarily to Nick Richards' skill. It's more about his contract next year. I think he will be an expiring, so that automatically kind of almost kicks him out the door. Um, but more so, Mark, he makes it to where if Mark, for some reason, because we still, and this is all based on, we have no idea what's going on with Mark. We don't know if
Mhm.
we don't know when he's going to play. We keep seeing pictures of him in practice, but that doesn't necessarily, we know as Hornets fan, that doesn't mean anything. Um, but for specifically for Mark, I feel like if this is who he is, it allows the Hornets to take a second, maybe sign Musa to an extended deal, of course, and weigh their options as opposed to maybe going ahead and just signing Mark for the sake of extending Mark, um, and paying him. I don't know what it's going to be. I would like to say it's going to be less than 50, 20 million, but I don't know how these things go because
It's like
that's like
that
the
might just be the rate
price.
for a starting center, you know?
Right, and that's the price that normally bigs are coming out once they're
Mhm,
coming out of their rookie
mhm,
contract, and it's not, to me as of right now, it's not deserved. But is it one of those situations where we're going to pay him because we don't want to lose him? We're going to pay him because we don't know. But I feel like with Musa, if this is who he is, it allows the Hornets to be like, you know what, Mark, you didn't play, and when you did come back, you weren't really where we wanted you to be. This is a more number. This is a better number we're more confident with. If you don't like it, oh well. We have Musa to not necessarily we're expecting him to be the starting center, but it just gives you time to make a better
mhm,
decision. I've always been on the camp of saying that I felt as though this team needs a more veteran savvy center just because we do have so many young players. I think having Parent LaMelo with a more savvy center or veteran center, a useful veteran center, not Taj Gibson, would be a bit more beneficial for the team. That's just kind of where I am, but I do understand like the way the cap is going, it may not look that way. But I just feel like if this is who Musa is, um, it allows you to just be a little more patient, not necessarily patient with Mark, but be a
mhm.
little more straightforward with Mark. You don't have to sell out and just give him the money that centers are getting after their rookie deal. You can say, look, this is what we're comfortable giving you. If you don't like it, then we'll draft somebody, we'll sign somebody, we'll trade for somebody. But it doesn't. I feel as though it doesn't make you pressured into being in a position where you're paying a guy who, let's say, even played half his rookie contract, $20 million. Because that's where I don't want to be. And I like Mark, but until he plays and until we can see kind of okay, he can stay on the court, I'm just not comfortable right now giving him any type of extreme uh extension. Now, like I said, now with Nick Richards, it's more so he will be a free agent next year, so maybe he may not even be in the cards. But I think you could bring him back. You could run him and Musa, until you have, who you want at that center position. So that's kind of where I feel. I'm interested to see what you think.
Yeah, just to real quickly put a bow on something I was saying a second ago, I just looked this up. With Moussa Diabate on the court this season, the Hornets in those 210 minutes, they have an offensive rebound rate of 42%, which is rather high. In the minutes with him, the 420 minutes with him off the court, an offensive rebound rate just under 28%. With Diabate on the court this season, the Hornets are giving up under 97 points per 100 possessions. With him off the court, defensive rating above 121.5. So small sample. Let's see where these things go. They're very noisy this time of the year and like
Yeah.
very reactive to 3-point shooting percentages. But those are interesting numbers to keep in mind. Yeah, as far as Mark goes, like I'm taking a more patient approach. Like again, it's been 11 months since he played a game. It's a huge bummer. I want to see him healthy. I want to see him back. I mean, look, they don't need to get into. I mean, extension shocks with him wouldn't even start really until they're not going to start until maybe next summer. After
Yeah.
what would essentially have to be his third season in the league, and like unless he plays a lot and plays great this season, then I mean, unless they're the Hornets and you think you could like lock him in at a team friendly number, you know what I mean, and get some
Mhm.
cost certainty. Nah, that seems like something you just kick down the road until he plays another full season and you take it into restricted free agency, right? Like that to me is sort of what that feels like. But that's further down the road. I was kind of thinking more or less like you have a guy like Richards. He signed through 2020, like he's under contract through 2026.
Mhm.
And he's got a then he becomes unrestricted free agent in 2026. I believe next season is non-guaranteed, but then fully guaranteed at yeah, it's June 29th this summer. So they may have to make a decision on Richards at some point this season. I was kind of wondering too, like hypothetically, like maybe Mark gets back at some point this year, knock on wood. Um, Musa continues to play well. maybe we've sort of like perpetually kicked the can on Richards as like a trade target or whatever. It's not something I think is like you need to like go out of your way to pursue. Like an opportunity
Right.
may present itself, whatever. But it's like if Mark came back, was like healthy, playing well, you had Diabate, like maybe it makes shopping Richards like a little bit more like advantageous, around the deadline or this off season or whatever. So like maybe it matters for that sake. You're probably not going to take three centers, sort of like three young centers and
And
just
who all
roll with
kind
those,
of play the same. Yeah.
do same things. Now, with that said, like Mark is still on a pretty like team friendly rookie contract. Richards is on a very friendly contract right now. I mean, 5 million a year last season, this season, and next season. It's funny. I remember doing the pod with Richie when Richards agreed to that deal. But the other thing I would say too is like you're going to get Musa on a very, assuming they are able to convert him, and that's going to be like you know, a multi-year deal with team options kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like they just kind of have like a fair amount of leverage in that situation. So, um, if and when that does come to fruition, it feels like you get all those guys have them on pretty fair numbers. All well below sort of like a starter level center salary. So maybe you have some time with that going forward too. But then you run into sort of like, well, what are we doing from a development standpoint? Those types of things. So I, those are like more good problems, like provided Mark is
For
back
sure.
and healthy and playing well. But in the short term, it's huge. I mean, we just read off a bunch of numbers, and if you've watched the Hornets play, you know how much this guy is impacting. He's impacting winning. So, any other thoughts on Diabate, Darian?
No, I just no, I just like you said, I think that it just has you wonder about what's going to happen with Nick Richards possibly,
Yeah.
and just because I think we're both saying here that like it's mainly just because his contract. It's not necessarily saying that Musa's
Mhm.
just leaps and bounds better than Nick Richards, but usually when things go, a competent team don't
Yeah.
let players just have their contract expired and let them walk
Yeah,
for
yeah.
nothing.
Something we were not unfamiliar with, covering the Hornets. But I just one last thing I would say on him, like the find of Diabate again, it's not like this guy was an unknown commodity. Like
Mhm.
this guy's a five-star recruit. He played at a Big Ten school. He was with the Clippers the last two seasons, and like he was a second round pick, 2, 3 years ago. So, but just given sort of like what the summer league roster looked like what how I think this is a feather in the cap for the front office in terms of like what their like internal scouting looks like for guys that are already in the pros. If you're looking for guys that are playing in Europe, playing in the G League, it was a good find, and like this is also like what small market teams like you've got like this is hitting. Spencer and I have talked about this for years. Like this is hitting singles, this is hitting doubles. It's not like
Agreed.
every transaction needs to be a home run, but these are like the little things you do that just like keep the inning going, keep the offense on the field. So I don't know. Like we'll see. Maybe it's a one-off, but hopefully it's the sign of more things to come. I kind of wanted to talk about Josh Green a little bit. He's played well recently. I don't know if we're going to have a time to kind of get more into Green, but just like thought Josh has played well recently. And it's been nice to see him more aggressive offensively. I hope that keeps up. Any thoughts on Green before we sort of like get into the last topic? I really kind of like want to like have us like chew on for a few minutes.
Yeah, I just want to say that I feel as though he is getting comfortable, like you said.
Hmm.
He is becoming more of that 3 and D player that we're looking for. And then also his hustle. That's something that I knew he could do just because like he has kind of been that hustle player for the Dallas Mavericks, but that was more so like loose balls, kind of picking up other teams, ball handling or whatnot. But I've really been surprised like how involved he is, like even with like rebounding and whatnot.
The
You may
corner
not get it, but
crashes.
he's
Yeah.
really good, yeah, at crashing and
Yeah.
tipping it out and just
Hmm.
keeping the ball alive. So he just swarms around the court. It's good to see him, taking a little more initiative offensively, and it's working out. Now, will he keep this rate? I don't know because it's a really
Yeah.
high right now.
We'll see. We'll
But
see. We'll see about it.
yeah, he's
Yeah, but yeah,
doing pretty well.
shot great the last couple of games. I know he's especially against Milwaukee. I know that was when he celebrated his 24th birthday. Yeah, I think he's done a nice job in transition. He's always been like a good connector in transition,
Mhm.
and he really runs the floor hard and fills the lanes, which is awesome to have with guys like obviously LaMelo, but certainly with a guy like Brandon Miller, who I think is like a sneaky good transition passer um, as well. I hope he stays aggressive. He shot it really well from three this year on a relatively small sample, but ultimately, like I don't know if we're at the point where like he seems like some big find, but like again, because he's just like pretty limited offensively and defensively, he does struggle guarding the point of attack, screen navigation, on ball, that kind of stuff. But I think Josh has played well this season, and he missed some time too, but I think he's played well. And again, I just hope he stays. I hope he stays aggressive because if he actually ends up like being a guy that can really give you something with the shot, and that's been the if then situation for him even for years now, going back to his time in Dallas. It raises his upside significantly, stating the obvious.
Mhm.
But okay, the guy I kind of wanted to sort of like discuss further. We can maybe save the Josh Green discussion for later when there's a little bit more info. But I kind of want to talk about Brandon Miller a little bit and just sort of like see where you are with him. Are you levels of concern? Are you worried? We're 9 games into hit. Brandon's played 9 games this season. He's missed time with an injury, which should be noted. Um, but 35% shooting from the floor, 30% on threes, only 42% on twos. His usage rate has mostly stayed the same. His assist numbers have jumped some. He's getting to the line, less frequently. He's shooting more threes. Just like to me, Darian, he's playing like kind of how I expected him to play last season. Like if this
That's
was like for
exactly
a
what I was
full,
gonna say.
if this was for like a full year, kind of, like if you extrapolated it out. But I think with Miller, like you still obviously like he has some of those games where he's just like unbelievably red hot coming off screen, shooting the ball. And it's the Indiana game really sticks out for that. He was incredible. Um, but still, even going back to his time at Bama, just like sort of some of the limitations or um, some of the limitations he has as a creator, as his ability to deal with contact, to deal with physicality, to deal with ball pressure with his drives. When guys are able to knock him off his plane, knock him off platform, what does that do to his shot? What does that do to his drive? It turns him into a guy that just ends up having to pick up the ball and pass it out a lot, or he takes tough contested twos. He's really struggled to finish at the rim at times this year. Yeah, Darian, uh, do you have any concern with Miller? Is this just sort of like a rough start to the year? Plus, he's shaking off an injury. He's coming into a new situation. He played well during preseason. It should be noted. So, are we just getting sort of like a rough sample from him this year, and that this is going to stabilize, or I don't know? Do you basically what's your level of concern, or do you not have any with Miller?
I'm a little concerned just because I like that you brought up his what he did at Alabama, because what we do now is very very similar to what they do at Alabama with NATO. It's threes at the rim. There's no mid range game. There's
Mhm.
one or the other. So I thought he would thrive a little bit more than what we're seeing, but it is going to take some time. I'm glad that you said that we're seeing kind of this year what we thought we would see last year, because I thought this is exactly what we would have had last year. So the only reason I am concerned is just because he has proven that how good of a player he is, and he's proven that he can do things that we may didn't get to see too much in college. So now to play more like how he played at Alabama and to struggle, it's a little concerning. But I'm not like out on him, or which would be ridiculous, but I'm not overreacting to anything. It's just I am a little just concerned, and just a little bit of how he's used and whatnot. But I think that he's going to find a way. We've seen him to have these kind of games, and not play well for stretches, and then all of a sudden he goes on a 10 game stretch where he's scoring 20 a game. So I think it's just going to take some time. Like you said, he is coming off injury. There are some other parts of his game that have uptick. So I'm not overall concerned, but it's just more of like disappointed, may be the better word, just because
Mhm.
he was actually one of the few people I really didn't think about slumping in a way. just
Yeah.
because of how fluid his game is and just how he is as a player. And honestly, right now, it's just like he's just missing. I don't think that it's necessarily just
Yeah.
bad fundamentals or anything like that. I think he's just missing. So I think that over time, as the offense starts to get cleaned up a little bit, as a team, I think he's going to benefit from that and just get a little more comfortable and get in rhythm. And I don't want him taking as many threes, but I see why they have him do it. But I wish he would. Like the Indiana game, I thought he was getting to the rim a little more, getting to the mid range a little more,
Mhm.
and it worked out. And then he was able to extend that to the 3 point line. But hopefully, we get more of that going forward. I know some people are talking about like how possible is him and LaMelo just can't mesh right now. I don't think that's it. I
No,
think Brandon's just
I don't
missing
buy
right now.
that. I actually don't buy that one bit. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
there's some stuff to sort out, but like we talk about this all the time. He's such an awesome off-ball player, right? Like
exactly.
he's so malleable. And I actually think those guys have like, especially with Miller as a screener, has been really good for LaMelo. And that's actually
Mhm.
gotten Miller some good, catch and shoot, pick and pop threes this season too. So like I don't I mean, I could be wrong about that, but I really don't buy it. I feel actually
Yeah,
pretty
and I
good
would
about
rather be wrong about it than say
yeah.
that's what's happening. I
Yeah.
would rather just be wrong.
His
But
his
yeah,
ga his game is just so jumper dependent that I think it's
mhm.
very possible for him to go to through stretches like this. I mean, over I think it's like close to yeah, damn near 63% of his shots this year have been threes, which is like he took a ton of threes last year, but that's way up. And a lot of his game last season was bolstered by him being such a good pull up mid-range shooter in the pick and roll. And we're just not quite seeing that to that level this season. So hopefully that does come along. And then really this is going to be something that like a year, 2 years from now, is he stronger? I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that could just absolutely like shred his way through the defense with a dribble. But he's got to be able to like sort of counter and be more physical when guys are sort of like in his airspace. So yeah, let's just see. Let's check in again with him in a couple of weeks. I think would sort of be
For sure.
my read on him. Um, well, Darian, we're running up against the clock. Our podcast overlords are telling us we got to get out of the studio here. Would really just like to thank you for joining me today. I know we're on a different schedule, but it's good to see your face. It's good to talk about this team. Would like to thank Richie Randall as usual for producing this, and for anyone listening, whether it was live or it's in podcast format in the next couple of days. Thank you for your patience and staying with us. Hopefully doing these pods, I know it's, one every, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, stuff like that. Hopefully they're serving as like good fillers, like in between,
Mhm.
especially if you're maybe not watching them play every game too. Like it's giving you some sort of like cliff notes on the team. But thank you for listening. We always appreciate everyone's support. And yeah, good luck to the Hornets tonight against Brooklyn. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening to Buzz Beat.